asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
Yeah, a couple of articles on richieallen.co.uk. One of them is about a fairly draconian story about a school that has decided to take toilet roll out of the toilets. It's a West Midlands school. A school in Dudley has decided to take toilet paper out of the toilets because some students have taken to blocking up the toilets. It's resulted in the embarrassing situation where primary school children have to ask for toilet roll in a class. The teacher will count off some sheets and the child will presumably then go to the bathroom. It's madness, really. Interesting piece on that on richieallen.co.uk, and one or two other examples of what is going on in schools. And I wrote a piece very quickly today. I have since amended it. It wasn't my best work. A piece about John Mann. Interesting stuff about John Mann. I rushed it out quick. There were some grammatical problems with it, one or two spelling mistakes as well, but I have corrected it. That's the beauty of the edit facility. It is interesting. It's about John Mann and this kind of McCarthyism thing about anti-Semitism, which we are going to talk about again in a minute, but I promise you I won't bore you and I won't be repeating stuff that you've heard in the last couple of days, because this is evolving, this story about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party and anti-Semitism in general in the UK. But the big story that you heard at the top of the hour there with Catherine Drew is that Yulia Skripal is awake, is conscious, is talking, and is improving rapidly. She's the daughter of Sergei Skripal. It has been alleged that her and her father, the ex-double agent, were poisoned nearly 4 weeks ago in Salisbury after being exposed to a nerve agent. That's what was alleged anyway. Right? Well, she's awake and responding well to treatment. Now, Sky News reporter, in fact, their crime correspondent, is a man called Martin Brunt, and he's been talking about it. He's, in fact, based outside the Skripals' house in Salisbury. Martin Brunt on the rapidly improving Yulia Skripal.
I think it's an extraordinary development. I mean, for the best part of a month since they were poisoned, we've been led to believe that they were, told indeed, that they were unconscious, critically ill, their very lives in the balance. And this wasn't just media speculation. This is the kind of language we'd heard from the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, even the judge in the Court of Protection last week, which the judge who was asked to adjudicate on some ongoing medical treatment. So, you know, the clear impression was given that both of them were unlikely to survive. I mean, so much so that when I interviewed Sergei Skripal's best friend a couple of days ago, Ross Cassidy, he too said that everything he had heard and read suggested that their death would be a merciful release. I mean, that's the impression that everybody's got. Now we're told by the hospital that that Yulia is improving. I mean, improving rapidly, according to a statement that was put out a couple of hours ago, and no longer in a critical condition. That was the official statement to the media from the hospital, but the hospital's medical director, Christine Blanchard, went on to say that Yulia had responded well to treatment, although there was a note of caution that she was still receiving expert clinical 24-hour care. So, you know, there isn't the suggestion that she's completely out of the woods, but it is an extraordinary turnaround in her condition.
Well, extraordinary indeed, eh? Very extraordinary. Not least because today the police investigating what happened to the Skripals have come out and said that they strongly believe that Skripal and his daughter first came into contact with the nerve agent that poisoned them at their home. The highest concentration of the agent used against the pair was found on their front door. So this is a remarkable development, this. And I have to say again, and again I say, I have no problem saying this, I don't have any proof of anything. When I say this, it's just speculation. But the idea that a professional team of assassins or a lone assassin would smear some nerve agent on the front door of a house and trust that Sergei Skripal would be exposed to enough of it that it would kill him is frankly monumental bollocks. It has to be bollocks, doesn't it? If you want to get rid of somebody, there are far easier ways of doing it than putting some nerve agent on a door and hoping that he comes into contact with enough of it that it will kill him. I just don't believe it. But I'm honest enough to say I don't know. It's just my take on things. What's very interesting, of course, is, and Martin Brunt alluded to it, he spoke with Ross Cassidy. I brought you that audio yesterday. Cassidy claims to be Skripal's best friend. And Cassidy said the condition was so bad, as far as he knew, of both Yulia and Sergei, that they would be better off if they were allowed to die. This stinks to high heaven, this story, doesn't it? Doesn't it really? We'll leave it alone because we've talked so much about it. Now, Jeremy Corbyn has said today that prejudice and harassment against Jews has no place in Labour. It doesn't have any place anywhere. Who would argue with that? But there has been no evidence put forward that Jews are harassed by anybody in Labour. Not in Labour as in giving birth, in the Labour Party. A leading Jeremy Corbyn ally resigned today for defending a candidate who posted a Holocaust denial article. You know this. It's been all over the news. Christine Shawcroft gave up her position as chair of Labour's disputes panel. She said she was wrong and misguided to have sent an email calling for a Peterborough Council candidate to have his suspension lifted. This is crazy stuff, right? A senior Labour source told Sky News they believe that Shawcroft is unlikely to stand down from Labour's ruling National Executive Committee, as her position will be up for election in June anyway. Sky News presenter Stephen Dixon filling in for Kay Burley. Here's Stephen Dixon.
Jeremy Corbyn says prejudice and harassment against Jewish people have no place in Labour. It comes after party official Christine Shawcroft stood down from the party's National Executive, their disputes committee, not from the executive itself, after it emerged she'd given her backing to a party member accused of Holocaust denial. Now, in a letter to Labour members, Mr Corbyn says it's important to develop a deeper understanding of what constitutes anti-Semitism. He says often it takes familiar forms, but newer forms of anti-Semitism have also appeared, sometimes woven into criticisms of the actions of Israeli governments. Support for justice for the Palestinian people should provide no one with the excuse to insult, harass or encourage hatred of Jewish people.
The problem is that in some quarters in the Labour Party, you've got people with this world picture that always attributes maliciousness and conspiracy to Jews, even to the extent that they accuse Jews of inventing the Holocaust.
Yeah. That was Jonathan Arkush there. Jonathan Arkush. He's the president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews. Then we had a remarkable turn of events then. You will have heard of Leave.eu. Leave.eu. You would have heard of it. Big pro-Brexit organisation, very prominent in the referendum campaign. They tweeted today. Now, their Twitter handle is @LeaveEUOfficial. @LeaveEUOfficial. Wait till you hear what they tweeted. This is funny. Is it any wonder that Labour can't be bothered to deal with the disgusting anti-Semitism in the party when they are so reliant on the votes of Britain's exploding Muslim population? It's a question of maths for these people, not justice, said Leave.eu. Ooh, right? The gloves are coming off. Fancy a bit of anti-Semitism? No, I prefer a bit of Islamophobia myself. Right? By the way, I'm joking. I don't think they're Islamophobic. They're idiots, but they're not Islamophobic. Well, Naz Shah is a Labour MP, Bradford. Do you remember Naz Shah? You'll remember Naz Shah. Naz was discovered by a blogger called Paul Staines back in April of 2016. it was discovered by Staines that Naz reposted a Facebook meme in 2014 that supported the relocation of Israel to the United States of America. It was funny and harmless. Save them some pocket money, said Naz, meaning save America some pocket money by basically ingesting Israel, right? Relocating Israel. Now, she wrote that at the time in 2014 because, like a lot of people, she was pissed off that the Israelis were carpet bombing Gaza and killing hundreds of children, which is what they were doing, right? It's what the Israelis do. So she wrote that, and she also wrote on Facebook about a newspaper poll concerning alleged Israeli war crimes in the Gaza conflict. She wrote that the Jews are rallying to the poll. And later in 2014, she appeared to compare some Israeli policies with the policies of Adolf Hitler. Adolf, tomato. Shah asserted at the time that her views on Israel had moderated in the 20 months since the post. However, she had to step down from her unpaid post as John McDonnell's private parliamentary secretary. She was eventually suspended from the Labour Party. Do you remember? She was suspended because she was an anti-Semite. Of course, there was nothing anti-Semitic about anything she said. Saying that America should basically adopt Israel is not anti-Semitic. Might be practical, as she suggested at the time. Comparing the Israeli behaviour to Hitler is not anti-Semitic either. It was factual. Anyway, she was suspended, she came back, and you know what, dear listener, these days, Naz is a much better girl. She knows her place. So she was on Sky News this afternoon, and she was asked to comment on the Vote EU. Let me say that again. She was asked to comment on the voteleave.eu tweet. That tweet that said, basically, that Labour's not interested in dealing with anti-Semitism because it's currying the Muslim vote. So what did Naz Shah say to that? The reformed anti-Semite.
I'm very unhappy, you're absolutely right, and the reason I'm unhappy is the tone it's taken, and what it's doing is a campaigning organisation which is far past its sell-by date, is using a narrative of division and hatred. And in this fight against anti-Semitism, it is the Jewish community that we have had support from. And to say this is about anti-Semitism, the Board of Jewish Deputies have rightfully condemned it this afternoon and said actually it is within the Muslim community that they have huge amounts of support for, and this is not the way to tackle anti-Semitism.
And there will be people, though, I mean, with the greatest of respect to you, there will be people saying, you know, why should we take the view of Naz Shah when it comes to anti-Semitism? You were suspended from the Labour Party because of posting anti-Semitic comments on Facebook.
Absolutely, which is why I can talk about my journey with building relationships with that Jewish community that I offended.
Yes, Naz has been thoroughly rehabilitated. She went away on a journey. She went on a journey of discovery, and she realised that you can never, ever, ever criticise Israel or your political career will be destroyed. Good girl, Naz. Right. Here's a bit more from Naz.
Well, look, it's very refreshing that you're approaching it head on in that way. So, with that in mind, can I ask you about Jeremy Corbyn has talked in this letter about anti-Semitism being viewed, looking at it from different perspectives. Now, is there a sense within some areas of the Labour Party, which have traditionally been very supportive of the plight of the Palestinians, for example, that approach has led to some anti-Semitism, very much in the idea of taking sides on that very difficult area of dispute? Is that one way where people have slipped into anti-Semitism, perhaps almost without meaning to?
Well, certainly in my case, that was definitely where I slipped. If we look at when I made my tweets and I hurt the Jewish community, that was during the Gaza conflict of 2014.
Yes, Naz has been reprogrammed completely. Her husband has no idea who she is. It's like the Stepford Wives. Who is this woman? Did you hear what she just said there?
Well, certainly in my case, that was definitely where I slipped. If we look at when I made my tweets and I hurt the Jewish community, that was during the Gaza conflict of 2014.
When I slipped, when I hurt the Jewish community, was over my tweets about the Gaza conflict. Naz's brain has been removed, and a carefully sculpted brain that's very similar to Naz's old brain, but not quite, has been put back in. and the skull has been replaced and she's been put back into the Labour Party. Gaza conflict, are you shitting me? There was no conflict, there was just mass murder from the sky by Israeli fighter jets, the latest and greatest technology, and you had a load of people underneath them in an open air prison that can't go anywhere, over land or sea they can't escape, and they were carpet bombed into oblivion. Gaza conflict, I hurt the Jewish community and I slipped, says Naz. Jesus Christ, huh? It doesn't get any more Stepford than that. Anyway, I was thinking today, I was going to do a virtue signalling countdown, but I'm not going to do one because I did one on Tuesday, was it? I think it was Tuesday. But there was a monumental example of virtue signalling today. It was absolutely incredible. It's a guy called Oliver Cam, and he's a writer with the Times of London, Oliver Cam. Do you want to hear this stuff? He's a columnist with the Times. He says to Sky News that anti-Semitism is endemic. Wait for this. Have I got it? I have. He says it's endemic in Jeremy Corbyn's circle. So we don't have a countdown, but this is so good, this. It deserves the music, so it's going to get it. It's going to get it. Listen to this Times columnist talking about Jeremy Corbyn, anti-Semitism, and his love of the Jews.
No, there is little doubt in my mind that anti-Semitism is not a huge problem in modern Britain. The problem is that there's a much greater incidence of this most virulent and ancient of hatreds in politics, and specifically in the Labour Party, and specifically in the circle around Jeremy Corbyn.
So why is that? Why is that in your view?
In my view, it's because there is a long-standing suspicion of the mere existence of Jewish people in certain parts of the far left. The idea that whereas the socialist utopia unites people, assimilates them, regardless of their ostensible differences with the abolition of capitalism, the Jewish people retain this stubborn attachment to their linguistic, cultural and national traditions. And I have, as a journalist, no particular interest in the fortunes of Judaism, but I have a passionate interest in the survival, the flourishing, and the thriving of the Jewish people. And Mr. Corbyn, in a party that has deep links historically with Anglo-Jewry, appears neither interested nor concerned in that issue.
The Richie Allen Show
Wow! That was amazing. I'm passionate about the flourishing, the thriving and the surviving of the Jewish people. Oliver Cam there of the Times. This is crazy, this. Check out my article about John Mann today and his heading up of this McCarthyism, this witch hunt to find anti-Semites around the country, which is largely based on things like you were in a room with a guy and he was talking to somebody else about how much he hates the Jews and you didn't leave. You stayed there. Therefore, you're anti-Semitic by association. This is the sort of stuff you see. You're in a Facebook group and there's 77,000 members of it. And one Thursday at 4 o'clock in the morning, some guy said the Holocaust even never happened. And you stayed in a Facebook group. Well, I never saw that post. Liar! You're an anti-Semite. You have to be destroyed. That's how it's going, you see. It's how it's been played out. And Mann, the rabid Zionist John Mann, whom I get into great detail in this article on richieallen.co.uk, which I did tidy up later on, and it's all true about this guy and his connections and what's really going on here. It's not about Corbyn. Corbyn's fans, you see, identity politics, mired in identity politics as they are, think this is left versus right and all that bollocks. It isn't. Corbyn is just one. That's to stir up all of this identity politics feelings. This is about everybody. It's about everybody, not about Corbyn. It's about preventing people from saying anything. Self-censorship. I want to say something. Will I say it? No, I could be destroyed. Therefore, I won't say it. That's what's going on. It's not about Corbyn. Corbyn is just another facet of the establishment. He's just another establishment stooge. That's all he is, yellow jezza. It's not about him. Don't worry about Jeremy Corbyn. He'll be fine. Jeremy will end up in the House of Lords. He's a millionaire already. He's not interested in you. Couldn't give a shit about you or yours at all. Don't ever think that he does. He doesn't. This is about you and your ability to stand up and complain against or protest against the fact that hundreds of politicians in this country, nationally and locally, are owned lock, stock and barrel by a foreign country. But they don't want you saying that. They don't want you thinking that. They don't want you whispering that. Hence the witch hunt that's underway at the moment. And as I said today, where is Edward Murrow in the national media to stand up to it on a daily basis and call these people out as liars and as traitors? Because their loyalties are to another state, not to their own state, and certainly not to you. And Corbyn has fallen over, bent over backwards, took his trousers and his underpants down and offered them his back passage. That's what Corbyn has done.